Hey, St. John. Welcome to the Post-Sermon Podcast. I am Deaconess Dehlia, and with me today is President Kevin Wilson of the Ohio District. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and hello, St. John.
All right, so we are actually recording during the Ohio District Church Workers Conference this week, which is hosted by St. John. And so we had an opportunity just to have you and over 100 pastors and a few deaconesses come and be refreshed by the word and have fellowship with one another, have some continuing education. So it's really cool that you were able to take the time and just talk to me for a few minutes. So how long have you been a part of the Ohio District?
18 years.
Okay. And that was first as a parish pastor?
Nope.
Okay.
I came to the district as what was called a regional facilitator, and I was assigned to the southern regions, so from Columbus down to northern Kentucky and into West Virginia. And so I actually never served as a parish pastor in Ohio.
Okay, and where were you before you came to
We
Ohio?
were in Phoenix.
Okay.
I started a new church in Phoenix.
Okay, and how many years were you there?
4 years.
4 years, okay.
So 4 years to get the congregation organized, to get the first building constructed, and worship at about 240 and 180 in a preschool. And I was willing to leave because our second building program was coming, and I had nothing left in the tank.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like, okay, Lord, there'll be some other way to serve because this is just, it's too much. So,
okay. And then you ended up in Ohio.
Yep.
And then of those 18 years, you've now been the district president for how many of those years?
6 years.
6 years. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about what a district president is? What are some things that you do?
Okay. My primary role is to provide support for the congregations and church workers of the Ohio District. Now, to especially be what we call rostered workers. So if you've been through the Missouri Synod's, say, university system, and then come out as a deaconess or come out as a pastor, very specific responsibilities there. But it largely is a role of support, trying to make sure resources are available for congregations. It's a pretty broad-ranging job.
Okay. And I know a big part of your job involves travel because
True.
In order to support the different church workers, are you trying to visit all the congregations or how does that work exactly?
Yeah. So the Ohio District is made up of Missouri Synod churches in Ohio, West Virginia, and northern Kentucky. So now there's not many churches in northern Kentucky or West Virginia. There's a few. So one role district president has is visiting each church in your district over a 3-year period. So
And how many are in Ohio then?
155.
Ooh, okay.
54 churches, one mission congregation that soon should be a church. And so 42 to 45 Sundays a year, I'm at a different church because most of the visiting is done on the weekend, or on Sunday. I should make that clear. And that allows me to, whatever the congregation would like. I may preach, I may sit in the pew, but usually I have the Sunday school time, like adult Sunday school class, to talk about what's going on in the district, to hear what's going on in the church. Often we'll meet with leaders afterwards. It's a fairly formal visit.
Very good. And so you mentioned travel and visiting all these congregations. Now you also meet with all of the district presidents.
Yes.
You're part of the Council of Presidents.
Very good.
Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is in the United States. It's broken up to 35 regional districts. And so of those 35 district presidents meet 5 times a year as far as the whole group. And that also includes the vice presidents of the Synod, synodical president. And so our responsibilities are largely tied to administrative work for the denomination. One thing, we approve every church worker who's placed in a congregation. So yes, we approved Deaconess Dehlia, and she was placed. It came up for a formal vote at this Council of Presidents. And so that's...
I don't think I realized that you guys formally vote on each person.
Each person,
wow.
Yep. And everyone's listed and shared individually. So at any point, someone could have said, I have questions or
concerns.
I speak up. Or no, I know this deaconess candidate.
Oh,
and I trust,
okay. So it can be positive things. Yeah, that makes sense.
I tell you, by the time we receive the names of the actual candidates, it is almost always positive.
That's wonderful.
Because the universities, the seminaries have already done a lot of work.
They've already done the
Yeah,
vetting, so there
yeah,
wouldn't be.
yeah.
That would make sense,
Now,
yeah.
as council of presidents, we also approve workers coming back on the roster. So there are various reasons for leaving the roster. There's a wide range, but you do have to apply to come back, and those are also considered one at a time, and it requires a 75% vote. I'm sorry, 66% of a supermajority for those. And so, as you can imagine, a fair amount of time is spent on that specific area. We also work a lot on policies that are used by every district for issuing calls, for various processes that you just have to do administratively as a district, so that we're on the same page. There's a fair amount of coordination that goes on. We get assignments from national conventions, and so after every convention, there's 12 to 15 different assignments that we usually break into teams and say, okay, we have responsibilities this time for helping recruit new church workers. All right, we're choosing 5 of you to be on a committee. You're going to interact with these folks from Synod staff. And for the next 3 years, you're working on this. And so right now I'm working on technology.
Where do these policies come from? Like, do they come from the local congregations, or are these things that you guys have come up with yourselves? Or
either they're policies of the Council of Presidents to help us work together.
Okay.
Or they come from Synod, where Synod has the actual policy manual and says, okay, you're part of Synod as Council of Presidents, you fit into the system. And we're talking policies on, let's say that St. John would call an associate pastor. All right, we have policies for that process so that we're all on the same page. Some of that's dictated by Synod. Synod says, here's who's eligible, who's not. But sometimes it's simply, okay, at what point do you contact another district president to say, heads up, we're talking to this particular pastor or deaconess in your district. So there's a lot of it's communication. And what it does is help us work together better and help us be more responsive to churches. I mean, that's the most important. The most important thing a district president does is make sure there are call lists for congregations and schools, that there are candidates there.
Yeah, and it seems like you guys really help just keep order with this process, because it can get, I'd imagine, pretty chaotic if there wasn't any kind of order.
If we all did our own thing, it would be very chaotic.
Very good. And something else I've noticed district presidents do is they tend to be the one to lead ordinations or commissioning services as well. I know my first call was through the SELC district, and President Carl Kruger was the one who commissioned me. And is that normally the process, or does that depend?
That is a responsibility delegated by Synod. So I do not have a choice on that. If any worker is being ordained, commissioned, installed in this district, I have to either personally
So the date
preside,
has to be run by you.
Make sure you can either I run it, or I can delegate and say, okay, please. But I am accountable for each person who's placed in our district. So that is one that, and we ask once in a while, okay, it'd be faster if we could. No, district president, that's your role. Mm-hmm. Take it seriously, and we do.
Yeah, okay.
I attend as many of those as I can and personally officiate. I think relationally it's a good thing to do. I don't mind being a celebration once in a while.
Yeah.
But we'll be in June and have 17 ordinations, commissionings, and installations. Okay, I'm not making it to 17. Just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I have to tell you what, next Sunday, this Sunday, I'll be blessed to be at St. Paul Chuckery, so neighboring with
Deaconess Janet
being installed. Yeah. And then I have an installation service at 3:00 in Cleveland.
Okay, that you're...
Yeah, I'm doing both, right? So as soon as I'm done at St. Paul, God bless, I'm gone. I'm up by 71.
Wow.
So that is the life of a district president.
Okay. And just hearing you talk, just your involvement with Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is really interesting, to be both on the local and the national side of things. And I guess I was wondering, is there anything St. John members should know about the Synod or Ohio District of things that are going on?
Synod-wise, and the Synod itself really focuses on supporting in the with the broadest possible brush. But Synod is still focused on local congregations. And what we see going to national conventions where decisions are made for the synod, the backdrop is still the local congregation. That's something I appreciate about the Missouri Synod. Likewise, as a district, I have 2 direct reports. I report to the synodical president for synodical type work, and literally the way we're constituted as a denomination, a district president is the synodical president's representative in that district. So ecclesiastical supervision, a big term, but that's part of what we do. But then I also report to the board of directors of the Ohio District. We have our own elected board. Our own convention elects the board. I report directly to the board, and I'm responsible for making sure resources are available to our churches and schools. And that is a significant thing that I work on, is making sure that St. John, if you have a need, if you're like, okay, we need some assistance with this, that somewhere, somehow the district is informed, and either we have someone that you can work with or we know who to refer you to, and just keep that going. So the local congregation, you can worry about taking care of your members, about reaching out to the community, and not have to spend time trying to figure out 15 other things.
Yeah, you're allowing the congregation to focus on like word and sacrament, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the pastor's job there. And you guys are kind of just helping,
so
like you said, bring
we're in
those
support.
resources.
So you should not have to spend 2 years trying to redo a constitution and bylaws. The district should have resources to say, hey, talk to these 2 people. You can save a year off your time and spend that time focused on word and sacrament, focused on the visitation of your members, focused on reaching your community. We will help you with these other areas.
Very good. So thinking about the conference here now, you preached during our opening service, and I know you've been having a lot of conversations with the pastors, and I think probably supporting and just, checking in with people. Is that kind of your primary goal? This is probably a pretty big, one of your big conference of the year, I would guess.
If you draw an analogy, this is my Holy Week.
I think I heard you say that to someone.
This is my Holy Week in the sense that this is my busiest time, and it's also emotionally the highlight. It's like, okay, I get to see all these church workers. I am blessed to preach at the opening worship service. That's a privilege. That's my Easter, if you will. And then, definitely the visiting. You have time together. This is an awful lot like Pastor Adam being able to go to a fellowship hall after a service and just go table to table. And that's what I did.
And that's what you're doing, yeah.
And just check in and see how you're doing and how's your wife and all these things. So that is a blessing. We also talk about what can we do to support workers who aren't here, right? Okay, if we have a deaconess that's not here and okay, is everything all right? I mean, can we reach out in some way? And so that's a good part of this gathering. I definitely want to say thank you to St. John for hosting. It is a lot of effort. It's a lot of time. You are very gracious as a host, and I assure you, I hear it throughout the day. I've heard it throughout today, the appreciation that the conference attendees have for everything that's going on here. It's a highlight because it allows us, what you've allowed us to do at St. John, is let's say compared to a conference center, which we've used in the past. Here, the conversation, the mutual encouragement is at a higher level. We're not in a corporate surrounding. We're in a church, right? We are where God's people gather, and that transfers to our conversations, which is largely why I like to support church workers' conferences and churches. It has an impact. The environment has an impact. So thank you.
That means a lot. And I know the church members here, they've been looking forward to this. And yes, it's definitely a lot of work, but just to see them being able to serve, the church workers, that's a really, really cool thing. And I agree, just attending it, it's so nice getting to worship in a sanctuary, and you're right. Normally these conferences are at a big convention center or something, which is fine. I mean, that's sometimes just how it works, and you can fit everyone, and that's great. But there is something special about being able to, hear the instrumentation, the organ, and just get to see the cross in front of your eyes and commune, at the rail, in front of the altar. It's a really
very true
special thing. So, all right. Well, are there any other questions I did not ask that you'd like me to maybe ask you or bring up?
District presidents also have the privilege of assisting congregations or workers or both who are in conflict or struggling. And I say privilege because that's how I look at it. Background, I've served a rather conflicted church. In fact, the second one I served had closed. That's how healthy it was. And so we restarted. And so I had an appreciation before of the fact that sometimes an outside voice who can come alongside is a good thing. And so part of what I do, and I get invited to say, okay, President Wilson, Pastor Wilson, we're struggling with something, we're in conflict over it. Okay, let's sit, let's talk, let's visit, let's see where you're at, and let's start working towards reconciliation. And it is a privilege to be able to have that voice, to be able to say, hey, there's a biblical way that God's given us to work with this. And I cannot wait for however long down the road, a year or two, to hear the stories of how God has provided healing.
Wow.
So it's you get to deal with a number of negative things as a district president, but God has not arranged us in such a way that it's just a negative thing. It is the opportunity for not only to see reconciliation healing, but for church members to learn how to do that in their own lives as they experience it at their church. So some folks say, some pastors will say, I never want to be a district president because I got to deal with all this stuff. Well, sometimes dealing with that stuff is the most profound work that God does. Jesus came for reconciliation in the first place, and he just keeps doing that work as sinful beings. So that's a piece that district presidents don't talk about a lot, but I do think it's an important role.
I love how you frame that it's a privilege to do that and to see God working through it.
So I think that ties in. And then as a district president, I do spend, even though I talk a lot about supporting churches and visit churches, most of my time really is with church. Either it's doing administration for the Synod, or it is with church workers. And so we have 16 circuits, which means churches are organized in circuits. There'll be 11, 12 churches per circuit. So I visit each one of those each year too. And so that's some more time. But that is directly with usually pastors. I will be at some of the educators' conferences, other things. So personally, the highlight is visiting the churches and then coming alongside workers who are either celebrating what God's doing or are really hurting and need some direction on where to get help. And so I think that's important stuff for a district president.
Yeah, that's significant work, and we appreciate you. Thank you for all you do.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, that is all for our episode. I just wanted to thank you, President Wilson, again for coming on this podcast, talking a little bit about your work as district president and your work with the Synod, and just all of your support for church workers and the congregations here in the Ohio District.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. All right, you guys. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.